Joining us today on the Everyman podcast is easily the single most qualified young man I've ever met. He is a pilot, a scuba diver, certified EMT. He is a PhD candidate who was recently just had his research paper published. And he's a prospective astronaut. He's our friend, our brother. Ladies and gentlemen, Dylan Dickstein. Dylan, what's up, man?
Glad to be here.
Yeah.
And I'm back.
You're back. You made it. And you know, if you guys are listening here for the first time on the Everyman podcast, or maybe you're just hopped in the canoe recently, Dylan was on the show back in episode 38 in the archives. You can check that out. We had a great conversation kind of about Dylan's history, what made him want to kind of get into space, literally, and kind of his career up until that point. And when we left him, he was about 5 days away from going to Antarctica.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, we said we kept in touch, you know, and I'm always keeping up with your social media. You know, obviously these uncertain circumstances of COVID-19 come up. Everything changes kind of for us and in some ways for Dylan, I'm sure. And, you know, you went to Antarctica, you made it.
I'm back.
And you're back. So
yeah,
let's just start there. What is that journey like? What's that transportation like? Was it brutal?
So I should share first off why I went in the first place. Ultimately, I'm in the running right now for the NASA astronaut selection, and as part of the people who take this process seriously, one of the things you want to show NASA is that you can handle extreme conditions and still be productive. And one of the favorites is to do something in Antarctica because it's a frigid place and it's very far away from hospitals and other things that can keep you safe. And if you can come back having done something worth doing, it's a nice indicator that you can be productive in tough environments. And I found a scientific expedition that was going down there in mid-November and joined this ship that was a 2-week mission in Antarctica. And because I'm where I am in Los Angeles, I mean any of us in North America, that's quite a ways away.
Yeah.
It's already a few flights to even get to a place where you can pick up a boat. And so the way that goes is from Los Angeles, you can take a flight to like Colombia, to Bogota, or to Chile in Santiago, which we did. Then we took another flight to Buenos Aires, Argentina, already very far away. Then another third flight from Buenos Aires, Argentina, down to Ushuaia, Argentina, the very southern tip of the Americas. And this is as far as, you know, some people get ever. Like, and this is already very far. When people would usually share, yeah, I went to the southern tip of the Americas. Like, this is a very unusual thing to say, but that's like, you know, people don't typically say, oh, but how come you didn't go further? Like, you know, that's far enough.
It's the bottom.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And sure enough, in Ushuaia, there was a boat waiting for the couple hundred people and me. And it's a 2-day crossing through the Drake Passage, which is famous for, you know, killing sailors hundreds of years ago. And it's some of the worst waters in the world, just because the waves are awful and the winds are terrible and it's cold. And it's about 400 to 500 miles from the southern tip of South America to the start of Antarctica. And you're in the middle of the ocean for 2 days as it's getting colder every hour and it's getting windier.
Yes.
Yeah. It's you know you're going somewhere crazy when it's already cold and you're just like, I don't know why I'm like, it's just getting worse. And this boat, it was equipped with some basic things. It did have a treadmill, and I'm a runner, and we can talk about my marathon too. Actually, since
Please.
yeah,
Nice.
but I enjoy running. And you can imagine when you're on a boat like this, it's difficult to get exercise, especially if you're used to endurance exercise. And but they did have a treadmill. So one morning, the morning we were supposed to arrive in Antarctica, it was incredibly cloudy, and it was cold outside. But I'm in their gym on their treadmill, so I was wearing this black tank top and shorts, and I'm inside. You know, it's warm in there. It's 70 Fahrenheit. It's comfortable for a gym. I'm doing my couple miles, and this gym has a little window you can see outside, and like a couple miles in, I'm like, what is that? And sure enough, there's like this white block that's kind of coming out of the clouds, and I'm like, is that what I think that is? And then sure enough, we're getting closer, and then finally there's like, it's clear that it's ice that's like coming out of the clouds, and finally it gives way. You can see this just ginormous, just iceberg,
Oh,
and it was like, oh shoot, and then finally the clouds started to part ways, and then you can see actually the start of what is the northern part of Antarctica. And it was just this crazy thing. I was like not in any position to be looking at Antarctica as I'm running on this treadmill. And mind you, the waves are doing this, so like my running is probably like just like awful form.
I was gonna say the only thing that could possibly be worse than running on a treadmill is like running on a treadmill in choppy water. And,
Yeah.
Right.
You know, that's like
Exactly.
got to be unbelievable.
I was getting more of like a trail running experience.
Like Rocky.
Cross country.
Exactly. But sure enough, I'm like, well, I gotta see it. I don't really care what I'm wearing. This is amazing. And so I also was plenty warm from having just gone on a run. I go outside, and sure enough, there are plenty of other people standing against the railing, all in their parkas. And the wind chill is like 0 Fahrenheit. And everyone's bundled up, and I'm in my tank top, and also end up being one of the younger people on the boat too. And so I think I stood out like a sore thumb, and they're like, who's this crazy guy? You know, like we have like people in like these red parkas and like, you know, their fur pelts, and then this guy in a black Patagonia tank top.
Nice.
Like, Americans. That's probably what they're thinking.
They're like fucking badasses, right? What they're saying, dude.
But that was my introduction to the continent. It was amazing. Then I finally went downstairs and put on some real clothes, and we arrived that day, and spent about a week and a half at different islands doing various species identification, looking at seals and whales and penguins, and also did some. We got some krill samples from the Antarctic waters, and we were able to compare that against different islands and see what kind of plastic content was in each of these krill in different parts of Antarctica to understand the microplastics there.
So I got a few points I want to hit on here about the boat specifically. Yeah. So, you know, I'm thinking about this journey, and I'm trying to put myself in your shoes, and I can only really think of two things. One is the scene in Mortal Kombat, the movie, where they're kind of coming up to the boat. It's all foggy, and this like dilapidated dragon boat comes up, and there's like, you know, lightning ninjas and all this shit. And you're kind of looking at it, it's like, well, okay, you know, I know this is a bad, like I'm metaphorically, like, you know, you're getting on this boat and you're going to Antarctica, but you're doing it anyway. And you're like, I know what I'm getting myself into. I see the lightning ninjas, and I'm going to go with it. You know, or like King Kong, where like they're going to the island and it's like, oh yeah, this is not too bad. And then something weird happens. And the next thing you know, there's Skull Island and there's a dinosaur and King Kong. Like, were at any point you like, you're going on that journey, you're going to Bogota and you're going to Argentina, and then you're like, I still got to get on this boat. And then you get there and you're like, maybe the boat won't be there and we'll just have to go home. Like, this is what I'm thinking. Like, what kind of shit is going through your head like that? Are you like, was the boat spooky? You know, like, was it ominous because of where it's going? You know, what was that like for you?
Right. I mean, this was certainly the farthest I'd ever been from home. It's hard to get much farther unless you go upward.
Yeah.
And so certainly there's a lot of logistics that go into getting there. It was a day and a half of just, getting to the boat. So that was like, okay, please let me get my luggage to the third place. Okay, good. I have my luggage. Okay, now I'm at this boat. Okay, I see the boat. Good, the boat's there. Okay, where's my luggage? Okay, my luggage was found on my boat. And and then the first day you get on the boat too, you have to be fitted for some clothes they provide. They give you boots that are meant for the ice, and they give you a dry suit for certain activities. So if you're near the water, you won't get wet. And so a lot of logistics, and certainly like the more you do this, especially on the first day, you're like, oh my goodness, like what are we getting ourselves into? But I think honestly that 2-day crossing of Drake Passage, it gives you some time to realize what you're about to do, and then finally that third day when you get there, it was like this amazing opportunity and experience where you feel very comfortable and you're excited. It's not this like anxiety. The Now one thing that was a bit challenging was the camping experience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Most of the nights we spent on the boat. Like everyone had a place to sleep. But there was, for those who were interested, you could spend a night on the ice, and I opted to do this. I wanted to see what that was like, and first time I'd ever camped on ice, camped while it was snowing, camped while glaciers were falling next to me, and first time ever I'd heard a seal snort next to my campsite.
Nice.
We had a penguin that wanted to enter my tent, and it's like these are things you don't get in most camping experiences.
Right. Well, I hear the penguins can be quite aggressive. I watched some documentary about penguins. It wasn't March of the Penguins that people, March
Right.
of the Penguins. It was something else. It was like a gritty
Probably
one.
Happy Feet, right?
Yeah, it was Happy Feet.
Happy
Yeah, it was a
Feet.
documentary.
One of
It
my
was a CGI
favorites.
documentary. Little dancers. They're so sweet. No, but they can be like, they're like kind of like ducks. Like penguins can be a little, aggressive with their desires. Do you see any weird penguin activity?
The penguins. I mean, also there are so many different types of penguins. The ones that are the largest are much farther south and on the eastern part of Antarctica, where we were. In the peninsula, there's Adelie penguins. There's Gentoo, and chinstraps. These are a little bit smaller, and at least the time of the year when we were there, not aggressive. In fact, of all the animals, they were some of the most docile because they are the top of the food chain. These tiny little cute things that don't know how to walk are actually the top of the food chain on the land portion of Antarctica.
Sweet.
That's why they're not well adapted to their own place, because no one's trying to eat them.
Nice.
That's pretty cool. And you made some awesome videos, which the links are going to be in the show notes here on the audio version of the YouTube page, so you guys can check that out for yourself at your viewing pleasure. But you have some amazing shots of the campsite, and just again, kind of how my brain works. I'm looking at the campsite, and just like any national park like Yosemite or whatever you go to, like you can't leave trash. You can't leave you're a mess behind you. So, I'm thinking, how did you poop? Like, what is the bathroom situation like
Right.
on Antarctica? Like, are you pooping in a bucket, and then you're bringing it back to the boat and dumping it into the thing, basically?
Yeah, I mean, you got it. Ultimately, you can't leave a trace, and Antarctica has some of the most stringent policies on this. You can't pee on the ice either, and so a couple of the staff brought a latrine, this makeshift latrine, effectively a bucket, and just for people's privacy, it was put kind of near the water, a little bit away from the tent site, and yeah, if you need to go, you could just walk over there and go.
It must have been a beautiful shit.
Oh my gosh.
Oh yeah.
I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
I'll just sit here.
Yeah.
I could sit here all day.
Just let it loose, bro.
Yeah, and so I had to go number one once, middle of the night, and mind you, this was in November, which is kind of like late spring in like early summer in Antarctica, because they're on the southern hemisphere, and so it's light a lot. The darkest it gets is maybe 2 a.m. in the morning, and it's still bright enough to see your hand in front of your face.
Hmm.
But it's dark enough to where you don't really know what's going on. I had a little headlamp, but I went to go urinate, and it's down by the water, and sure enough, I'm midstream, and I hear this like very breathy nostril breath from something very close, and I'm like, oh my goodness.
Which one of my scientist mates here is watching me?
Right.
I kind of like, do the best to turn around, and I can't see anything, but I like kind of like, pause what I'm doing, and realize that a seal is really close.
Nice.
And it's one of those things where it's like, okay, I mean, I'm clearly in the middle of nature here. I didn't feel nervous by what was going on, but it was definitely surprising. It was certainly like, this is not something you experience when you're going number one.
Damn.
I was in San Diego with my fiance this past January, and went to La Jolla for the first time. And I was like, hey, people, the sign says don't approach the seals, and then there's like various tourists from all over the world, like, like getting up there and taking selfies with these things. And I'm like, dude, that's not a good idea. But like, I was
get bitten.
Yeah, like they were just like so docile and weird. But I guess those are like, used to that kind of behavior. But so did you feel any sort of like vibe? Like did anything about Antarctica feel like special, or like you're like, man, that's kind of a weird energy? Because like it's kind of like when you go out into the mountains, you get away from all the Wi-Fi. Like it's just anecdotal, but maybe it's maybe there's something to it. But you feel like a certain, you're in the middle of the woods when you're camping or whatever. You're like you said, you're as far away from civilization really as you can get. Did you feel any sort of difference?
Right. Because ultimately the one of the objectives of the experience was also to perform some science. There weren't so many opportunities to just kind of like be one with nature, but I did have an experience that was most like this on that night of camping, and I try to capture a little bit of it in the video, but certainly maybe me expressing this would be more accurate. I had set up my tent, and just had an opportunity to kind of explore. We had an area that we were able to walk around, and it was a rather generous area. You can go pretty far away from the tents, and I did that. I walked kind of to the ends and sat down not far from the water, and just laid down on the ice. I was wearing plenty of clothes, and so I didn't feel cold. And I just kind of looked up at the stars, down in Antarctica, and it's like, wow, these are the same stars you can see in Los Angeles or anywhere else. And that's kind of like this cool connecting aspect to where you are. And yet there is, you are far from civilization. It would take days for you to go anywhere with a major city. And it was silent. It was so quiet, and it was beautiful, and the only thing you could hear were just like these penguin colonies miles away, multiple miles away, and you hear them like echoing through like the mountains in a way, and like the way like their calls would bounce off the glaciers. It was something I'd never experienced, and it was like, wow, these guys never sleep, but this is really cool. And I actually nodded off on the ice. I was just laying on my back, and I just fell asleep for maybe 20 minutes, and felt very peaceful, very relaxed, and kind of slowly woke up at some point, and I was like, I probably should get to my tent. And then I looked to my right, and about 4 feet away, a Gen 2 penguin had decided to sit down next to me.
Oh, cool, dude.
Yeah, it
That's
was
so
like
cool.
what the heck? I'm sleeping with the penguin.
Dude.
And it didn't mind my presence at all. It was super docile. It just like, I don't know, maybe thought I was good company. Who knows? And it was just like this amazing like experience you would never experience anywhere else.
Dude, that's
so
fucking
cool.
sweet, man. Yo, you gotta tell me about the videos because like some of those penguins just came right up to you, bro. Like you got some awesome shots.
Thank you. Yeah, you can get relatively close. About 6 feet, 2 meters is what they suggest as the closest you get to a penguin. And you do your best. Like ultimately, you can like plant yourself 6 feet from a penguin, but at some point, you can only do so much because a penguin might choose to come toward you.
Right.
And if by moving you're endangering other penguins or other people or getting into its way, it's better just to stay put and let it kind of walk over your foot, than to try to move, and that's how you can get these amazing like up close interactions with these animals.
It's pretty sweet. Can you talk about the cold? Like I'm from Chicago and we got cold, but like,
is it really that cold?
Dude, it has to be.
You're from Southern California though. Like, that's what I'm saying. Like, because like you said, Chicago, I was in Rochester, Minnesota in January, once, and it was like fucking -10 with the wind chill. Like, what's real zero? Like, how cold is that?
Right. And I have to give it to you though, like in Chicago in the winter is worse temperature wise than a lot of Antarctica. And Antarctica, you have to kind of, recall that a lot of it is, a lot of the places that you would experience in Antarctica are close to water.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're close to like large bodies of water, bigger than the Great Lakes, it controls the temperature quite a bit. And so you have to go really inland for it to get frigid cold. What you do get on the coast, though, and any part of Antarctica, is wind. And when there was one day when we had hurricane force winds, and we could not go outside except for just a certain part of the boat. And out of curiosity and maintaining some a good level of safety, I wanted to see what that felt like. And sure enough, it was the coldest I had ever felt, and the windiest. Going outside in this equivalent to a Category 1 hurricane, but in like a frozen environment. That was a really interesting experience, and it was cold. I mean, certainly like more than just a few minutes out there, and it's quite uncomfortable on anything that's exposed.
Well, how long were you outside when you you got off the treadmill and you went out there with the tank top on and you showed off your everyman muscles and people were like, "What the fuck, bro?" Like,
yeah, exactly.
How long were you out there?
I was out there in total about 25 minutes.
Dude.
I would say the first 20 of that though, I was riding my own body heat. I felt plenty warm. I was totally toasty. I did not even recognize what temperature it was. And my own sweat, I wasn't sweating that much. So I wasn't like, my own sweat wasn't freezing. So it was, I felt okay. But certainly in those, like, it took no more than 5 seconds for someone to go, what are you doing?
Yeah.
And I was like, I just came from a run. They're like, where were you running? They have one treadmill. But certainly once my own body heat came back to normal, in those last 5 minutes, I'm like, okay, it's really cold.
Yeah, it's real cold.
Like you didn't get sick, man. That could have gone bad. That's so. A couple last questions here about Antarctica before we move on to the. I mean, we could spend a whole hour and a half talking about just that, man. But what was like the most challenging aspect of the whole experience for you?
I think it would be the survivalist aspect that I experienced the night we were on the ice. This was a lot of newness to me. It's about as raw as it could get. You first off, you're out in the elements, only separated by this tiny, thin layer of cloth. You're building this tent on ice. So you pack the ice just to lay on this hard ice. Ultimately, you have to be incredibly careful not to get any moisture in that tent because your body heat's going to melt it. And if the temperature ultimately in the middle of the night drops below freezing, anything that melted is going to freeze again. And so you do have real risk for frostbite if you sleep too long on something that's wet. So any socks, for instance, that might have like some sweat in them, get them off. This kind of thing. So there definitely is some risk that you need to mitigate. Ultimately, it's the windiest location I'd ever set up a tent as well. And so, a lot of us have tents that have, these pieces to them that we don't use, or maybe they have like an extra area you can stab down to the ground and you forget about it. You're like, oh, it's fine. Like you need everything. You need everything you're given. And you find extra sticks to try to secure your tent. And then not to mention the fact that since you are leaving no trace, you have to prepare for the situation. So you purposely drink less water, you eat less food during the day, and fortunately, you do have plenty of water available for you. If you get thirsty, you just grab some snow and put it in your mouth.
Yeah, did you get any of that good stuff?
Oh yeah, you can eat the Antarctic snow.
I'm surprised they let you do that.
I mean, ultimately, that's
there's gonna be more.
What is that?
It replenishes itself, so I guess it's
yeah, exactly. Give it 24 hours, and
yeah,
it's back.
One thing that, from like a sustainability and a conservation standpoint, in part of leaving no trace, any hole you create with your shoes needs to be filled, because any hole that you're creating becomes a huge hazard for penguins.
Oh man!
And
so what do you like going behind yourself with a broom and like sweeping it?
You can do a shuffle. When you're walking, you actually can shuffle more than taking like big steps, and so you end up like creating more like a ski-like line. But certainly there were some heavier individuals that were on the trip, and they were making real big divots in the ground where penguins would have a problem, and it was a tough situation because you don't want to create these, but some of them are inevitable. And then how do you fix it? You make another step, which makes more. And so
you gotta like walk in one direction, then walk the same direction on the way back.
That's clever too. The way we were doing it though, the last people to go out had to essentially wipe it clean. So essentially, like, you can use the side of your foot to try to fill any holes that were created. We also were given shovels, and so you could use the shovel to smooth out your path.
Jeez.
What happens if you like spill like an MRE on the ground? Like, are you like, oh, like you gotta get it off the ground, like, or can some tang go into the ice?
Well, I missed this. Whew.
So like if you're eating something, right, and you're I guess you wouldn't be eating when you're on the ice, right?
You cannot. Yeah.
So that's what I'm saying. Like if you spilled like a Gatorade, how would you? Yeah, I guess you would have to get it out of the ice, right?
Well, simpler than this, you can't even bring anything besides water.
Yeah.
And so the only exception actually. I think there were a few individuals on the trip who needed some medication, and so they were able to bring their medication with them onto the ice. But otherwise, you can only bring bottled water, and so that's a kind of part of the challenge too. Like for the time that you're on the ice, you're fasting.
Dude, I got two questions though. One, were you ever scared at any point?
No. I honest. I think we were given good instruction, and we were given the right tools to be successful. Also, I mean, there's some part of it also keeping a positive attitude, being excited about what you're doing, and certainly I was enjoying myself, and it was very fun, and I felt very lucky to be part of it, and I certainly there was an incredible amount of newness and things that I had to, get out of my comfort zone and try and slowly gain comfort with. But at no point was I feeling nervous or scared.
Second question.
Give me.
Because I am a people person and I love everybody. Did you make any new friends, man?
Good question.
I like this. Yes. Yes. There were a few people my age, and this from all over the world too. The couple of individuals that I got closest to on the trip, one was from Norway, and the other was from Australia.
Cool.
It was just like this very international collaboration that was fun, and everyone's working together toward a single goal. Very cool. Yeah, and ultimately these, not the best of friends. Ultimately, I'm not communicating with these people every day, but yeah, these are new contacts of mine that I can reach out to if I ever get to these locations.
It's pretty sweet, dude.
Always making connections. Daryl would have been coming home with 5 penguins. He'd have a whole new gang.
Stay in the bag.
All right. So last 2 questions about this here topic. So we talked about it again, episode 38 here in the archives, way back in the pre uncertain circumstances era. I just have to ask. I have to. Did you see the ice wall? Is there an ice wall?
I mean, this experience on the treadmill is probably the closest I would experience to an ice wall, just more of a wall of fog. To everyone's shock, the world, to this, coming from this prospective astronaut, the world is spherical, and
end of story there. We finally got an answer on it. I needed to know somebody who went, to really just put that.
No ice wall,
right,
no dragons.
So the follow up there would be. The follow up to that would be, if there's no ice wall, was there any, discovered Nazi bases or anything of that ilk? Any astronauts? Any hollow Earth? Situations, ancient creatures, nothing of the sort.
There perhaps to people's surprise, there were areas of industry on Antarctica. There was a big whaling industry, and by big I mean we're talking about dozens of people. But there was a whaling industry in parts of Antarctica decades ago, and we actually got to visit one of the areas that was more or less like the capital of Antarctica, and it's Antarctica. I mean, you are in the middle of nowhere,
but there's a cabin.
But yeah, there's some rusted cabin, and then there also were oil derricks, because that's what they would do. They would burn the whale blubber and use it as fuel. And so that was very interesting to see these decade-old, or almost at this point, maybe 70 or 80 year old oil derricks that were from a different time in Antarctica.
That's pretty cool. I didn't know that.
That is cool.
And that would be kind of again, I have to use a movie reference, but Pitch Black or something, where you're on this alien world, and then all of a sudden you discover oh my God, there's been people here. This is weird. I thought I was going to be just penguins. That's pretty crazy, man.
Oh, definitely. And yeah, if we hadn't gotten the briefing saying what we were about to experience, it would be surreal. It would be I thought we were far away from civilization here. This looks decently civilized, or at least it used to. But,
it turns out they just snuck you to Alaska instead. You thought you were going one way, they took you up the other way.
Yeah, my Google Maps was all turned around.
Yeah, you had your map quests upside down or something. Man, that's awesome. And again, guys and gals listening to this this conversation, check out those videos. They're in the show notes. Really cool incident. And also your YouTube channel in general, man. I found myself kind of cruising through it this afternoon, checking out your cross country flight, videos, and just all your adventures. You're you're just a modern man. I'm not going to compare you to anybody. You are you, man. It's impressive. So
I want to let everybody know that he edited those and shot those.
Yeah, he's like I said, you're a qualified man. That should just be your
ridiculous
your thing.
Appreciate that.
Dylan Dickstein, qualified man.
And they're beautiful. They're beautiful. Watch them.
Love it. Yeah, thank you.
So, you're wearing this sweet NASA windbreaker, and obviously, as we talked about previously, you've had some involvement with SpaceX and working in that aerospace industry. And this past summer, we had a really cool event, and it was it was historic, and it was something that on the surface level, I think people in general now are very cynical overall, and it's one of those things that could have just been lost in the weeds. But I'm talking about SpaceX Falcon 9 launch, Launch for America, taking NASA astronauts to the International Space Station on a rocket that was designed and built in America, not relying on anybody else, other people involved, but it was an American venture. What does that mean for the country? What does that mean for, space travel, our future? What does all that mean?
It's an amazing step forward. This is the first time in about 10 or 11 years that we've done this. And ultimately, it's also something that I personally worked on. I had 16 parts on that vehicle.
Nice.
And I personally knew the two astronauts on board, Bob Behnken and Doug Hurley, were two of the first astronauts I ever met. And they were the ones that actually inspired me to be on this path myself. Truly, those two individuals are really the facilitators of that. And but as a mission, it's super important because it gives us a lot of flexibility to create our own objectives and our own timelines, and inspire other countries to try to keep up and follow suit. And it's not it's not like, oh, we did this, we're the only ones that can do this. No, I mean, ultimately, like plenty of countries can achieve something like this, but it ultimately does take the right mission, the right level of collaboration, and the right technical expertise. And SpaceX has those things and does it really, really well. I really felt lucky to work there and to be part of that Crew Dragon vehicle. But then you also need the right training in the crew. The astronauts on board are some of the best in the business. Bob Behnken and Doug Hurley are seasoned astronauts who were fearless through the whole experience. Bob is a test pilot by training, and it showed because both these individuals kept their calm in a rather difficult situation. It's incredibly new. The first time that any individual had ever ridden this vehicle. It had been launched before without humans, but to be the first humans inside that vehicle, that takes some guts, and they did it really, really well.
It was, I've always had an appreciation for, space travel, just the idea of it, and kind of the more philosophical end of it, I guess. I'm interested in just what it means, for humanity. And then, you're right. There's obviously a lot of spacefaring, civilizations. The Russians, we've been doing it for a while. The Russians been doing it. But for me, what I think was so amazing about this was like, I saw this in real time, from SpaceX not being a thing to we did it. And totally. Like, just if you boil it down to that idea, there's plenty of people that'll tell you how something can't be done, or like it's never going to work because we've been doing it like this for 30 years, pal. It's never going to work. And then you go, well, I hear you, but we're going to do it and we're going to see what happens anyway. And like that in a nutshell, man, is what, we talk about here on the Everyman podcast, whether it's somebody who's getting ready for the NFL draft, like we had guests on in the spring, or, former NFL quarterbacks, or, yourself just as an adventurer and a scientist and all the things that you do. Like, if you don't have that perspective of, yeah, but I'm gonna, you got to reevaluate how you're setting your tone, because like this is an example of like pardon my French, because I know the other cool thing I was just thinking, hopefully NASA checks out some of this podcast. You got a good boy here. He's a good man.
Yeah, dude.
So if this ends up in the review process, just you're hearing it from us, we approve.
These are my two references here, yes.
Yes, these are two references,
right there.
exactly. Perfect. But like, you're in it, man, and you're doing it, and you're an example of it every day, whether it's you're flying a plane from San Diego to Pomona or whatever, or you're scuba diving, you're hanging with penguins, you're going to Antarctica, man. It's that can-do attitude that people have lost sight of. And I just, it's why I love talking to you, man.
Thank you. And what's exciting too, I think maybe the right way to also view these things is, I think sometimes people dwell too much on like reaching an objective, and they like want to celebrate that. You need to recognize your milestones, but I think being able to swallow that excitement and realize that you're not done is just as exciting too.
Yeah.
And it's cool that if it'd be one thing if SpaceX set out to be the first private company to send humans to space. They wouldn't be a company today. At least they could be. They reach their end game, and they're done. Even though they've done amazing things to get there, they've already broken so many records. But they set such a big goal for themselves to be the first company to have humans get to Mars and to colonize this planet. Such an incredibly large goal, super unlikely when they first started, and then to be able to bite off the amount of risk, in succession, and be able to set the right checkpoints and then achieve them over and over. This is unbelievable. And for people to, and this is something we should also see in more people, the ability to dream massively, but also be able to recognize when you have reached a milestone within it. But don't stop there. Let yourself really continue toward that big dream.
Hell yeah.
Dude, hell yeah. Hell yeah, indeed. And, last time we had a conversation, man, I said to you, like, how far out are we? And I think you said somewhere around like 2035 or something like that. Maybe I'm misremembering.
Yeah, I think this is reasonable.
So, I mean, a lot has changed, in the world in general. Obviously, aerospace is still trucking this whole time, uncertain circumstances or not. Do you think you still believe it? You still think that's going to happen?
Yes. Yeah, I think this is a reasonable timeline. We ultimately, it's a 2 and change year mission. It's about 26 months or so that Earth and Mars align. And we'd like to get to Mars somewhere away from the solar maximum. Essentially, the sun has an 11-year cycle. And it was just announced today, by the way, that we're in the next cycle. So we reached our minimum in December of 2019. And the sun kind of changes quite a bit when it's reaching its bottom and its top. So it's hard to tell exactly when you've reached these points. But officially, it's been announced that today we have created the solar minimum, the least amount of activity in the sun. And these are the times you want to fly deep space. Because if you are trying to travel from here to Mars or anywhere away from an atmosphere, you want as little solar activity to give you as little radiation as possible. And so this is also part of the timeline too. And this kind of tracks us toward the mid-2030s as the time to start heading that direction in order to not have our astronauts there at a solar maximum.
Wow. How much more technology do we need to actually make the trip, do you think, from your expert opinion?
I mean, like, from a quantitative, not to be too quantitative about it, but there need to still be significant advances, especially with regard to how we're going to create the gases that we need to live as humans, and the liquids, namely water and oxygen, and these are heavy unless you can create them yourself, and you can. There are ways to synthesize water and oxygen, uh, but these processes aren't simple on Earth, let alone to try to do these things somewhere else. So you need more efficient systems that can do this. You also need a really robust way of protecting people from the radiation, because without a thick atmosphere like we have here on Earth, you would actually have some real massive issues with our skin, and the way that it'll be affected by the radiation. There are some solutions to this, though. You can live behind a wall of water. Water does a very good job at limiting your radiation exposure, and same with living behind a wall of lead. This is tough because lead's very heavy. You don't want to bring lead with you to space.
Yeah.
I was just thinking the irony of like you traveling all the way to Mars and then you have to live under, like you have to live in a water wall. Like it's just it's like a really shitty turn of events.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you can still do your EVA, but you have to limit your exposure quite a bit.
Right.
Humans are designed incredibly well for the planet we live on. We do it better than anything else. We think about the other species that we're sharing this rock with, and we're the only ones creating laws. We're the only ones that have written language, right? Like we don't have much competition here on Earth to really define us as humans over whatever that next species is, and it's because we're equipped incredibly well for the place where we live. Mars is very different, and so are any other planet and other celestial body in the universe, and even these places that we think of as like Earth 2.0, like these planets we're finding very far away from us that look like us, have liquid water. Guaranteed, we'd have trouble living there. But this is where the right technology comes into play, and it's coming. But we do need a little bit more time to check out these systems.
And you still want to go?
Certainly. This is my big dream, and I won't stop till that final checkpoint is reached.
So you talked about massive goals, and just speculating, of course. Do you think that Mars really is the big massive goal that he's got in mind? I'm speaking about Elon and SpaceX, or do you think that they're thinking even beyond that?
Okay, let's say in the 30s we do get to Mars. First boots on Mars, this amazing event. First time in history a human's been on a new planet. This is step one in this big process of colonizing the planet, but it will take generations to fully colonize Mars. That's and that will ultimately be an international effort with many private companies and many government organizations contributing to this. SpaceX is just trying to be the first to get there, but they're not going to do it alone. And but if this all happens, and instead of the $2 trillion companies today like Apple and Amazon, if SpaceX is worth $2 trillion, having been this private company to take us to the new planet and colonize it, it probably has the technology to go elsewhere. So I think that you're right to think that if we can get to Mars and we can do it consistently, you can go other places too.
Because really, what's the only thing that's stopping you at that point is just like human lifespan and your ability to adapt.
Right. Distance-wise, Mars is about as close to us as the sun is, and if you want to go further, we're talking like maybe twice the distance. It takes about 9 months to get to Mars. So, we're still talking within a year or 2 years to get to the next thing, whether it be Europa or Titan, these moons of Jupiter and Saturn. I have high confidence that in the existence of the human species, we will also step foot on these places too.
I want to ask you about this story that's been going on about Venus and the detecting something in the atmosphere that could indicate biological life. What's going on there with that? Can you explain that to a simpleton like myself?
Yeah, it's this is not my area of expertise. I'll forward with that, but ultimately we do have similar things on Mars. There's a good chance that there are microbes or bacteria on other planets, and the big news with Venus, as you mentioned, was that these chemical signatures were found for Venus, our second planet to the sun, and that's very exciting. Ultimately, because we saw something similar announced a year or two ago with Mars, and if we're seeing that with Venus, then other Jovian planets, other rocky planets, probably have these sorts of things too. So it's maybe not the exciting contact that we're looking for with aliens coming to us or us making contact with aliens. Like we're talking about truly like things that would live on your skin that you wouldn't even recognize that are there. Like we have billions of bacteria on us and we don't even know their names. This is the kind of life that we're seeing that we suspect live on Venus and Mars. You unless you have the right equipment, you wouldn't even know they're there. But it is exciting because what it does tell us is that life ultimately can survive on these places that we as humans cannot, without the right technology.
Life will find a way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it does very well.
So, something that Daryl and I have been talking about a lot, and there's a broader kind of element to this idea. And I kind of feel like we're in the middle of some sort of like change right now. Change in, society on a bunch of different levels. A change in kind of perception of those kind of things, but also a perception of nature. Like I feel like there's like this kind of awakening happening in a lot of different areas all at the same time. And then you couple that with like things like the SpaceX successful launch, and more and more companies coming together to do these. We talked about James Cameron and his space mining and stuff, and Jeff Bezos is in it, and Robert Branson is in it, and right now there's probably some billionaire we don't even know their name. They're getting into it. Then you have like kind of in the spring, the Department of Defense and the Pentagon put out kind of like sort of acknowledged that there's a study of, they call them unidentified aerial phenomenon now, UAPs, UFOs, UAP, same thing. And, more and more people are going up, whether it's homemade weather balloons or homemade rockets with GoPros, or fucking David Blaine. Did you guys see that David Blaine holding on to balloons? The guy's a loon, and I love it.
Went to 24,000 feet and then came down on his own parachute. Yeah, it was amazing.
I don't know if you saw him on Joe Rogan recently, but if you haven't, please watch it. Everybody listening, and Dylan, yourself included, man. Totally new respect for that guy. He's got the fucking man. But more and more people are going up. More and more cameras are going up. And then you got the Pentagon saying, yeah, look, the thing in this video was actively jamming, Commander Fravor's F-18 here. It's not ours. We don't know what it is. I feel like we're heading closer and closer to some sort of like official acknowledgement of like, look, we don't know what they are, but we're studying them, or we've documented it. Like, what is your take kind of on that? Because I'm sure you've been paying attention to it as somebody who wants to go up into the stars. Now, all of a sudden, the New York Times is running major stories about how this is a real thing. What's your take on all that?
If we're talking about alien life and making contact, my scientist has to come out strong and say, not to burst anyone's bubble, but you will know in the most amazing way when we have first contact.
That's kind of what I'm thinking.
It's not going to be this subtle thing that only a few people are aware of, and that it's like this hush-hush, exciting thing that we need to uncover. It will be fantastic. It will be the craziest thing to happen that decade, and everyone will know about it quickly. As much I think as we enjoy to think of the idea as aliens having already come, and that it's like this secretive idea, when it happens, you will know like a hurricane hit you. And it will be amazing. It will change the course of humans' history, because we will change everything about how we live to better understand what we're experiencing, how to communicate with them, whether we're afraid of them.
Yeah, I mean, if you think COVID stopped American economy, what do you think aliens would do? You think anybody's going to pay the goddamn electric bill or, going to work that day? I don't think so.
And governments would want, ultimately, international governments would like to have companies work on, understanding them, and you'd have linguists being tasked with and decoding what they're saying, or things like this. You would have a global effort, just like we're seeing today with COVID, in this global effort to stay healthy and to come up with a vaccine. I definitely I wouldn't call sci-fi, but I would say that there are other explanations for these sort of mysterious happenings outside of extraterrestrial life. I would say when we do have, if and when in the course of the human species, that we come in contact with another intelligent life, it will be fantastic.
Believe it.
Well,
I believe it.
More so, though, the thing I'm kind of really focused on is the aircraft. If they're saying, yeah, it's not ours, it's not a naval piece of equipment, it's not the Air Force, it's not this, it's not that, and then is it are these test planes, in the same way that when people, let me just say, 4th of July, okay? We had a social distance barbecue, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And just a couple people. It was great time. We're outdoors. Now, we're in the Philadelphia area, right outside Philadelphia, and they had organized a flyover of the Liberty Bell with the stealth bomber and F-22s and an AC-130. Now, they had done the Blue Angels a couple months before, and our home is literally on the flight path. We could look out our backyard, and they are there hanging at 50 feet. It seemed like 50 feet from the ground. Right. It was insane watching these things go. So we're all excited. We're like, holy shit, I've never seen a stealth bomber. And I'm like, it's 4th of July. I love this country. And I'm going to see a stealth bomber. And I got my family and my friends here. It's going to be wonderful. Okay. All of a sudden you hear this thing coming, and we all look up. And when I saw that thing for the first time, and the way it's coming, it was because we're standing like this and it's coming parallel, and the shape of it, the sound of it, the way that the light doesn't really reflect off of it because it just sucks the light into it. It's very strange. It looks like it's one shape, and then it gets next to you, and then it looks like it's another shape, and then as it's going away, it's kind of like a V, and you're like, I think I know what I just saw. But if I had no idea that existed, and it's 1989, when they were testing those things out in Nevada, and you're like, oh, that's a UFO for sure. That's an alien. But then you see it now, and now that we know it exists, it's still amazing. It's still unbelievable to see fly through the air. Cause like,
Sure.
I don't know if you've ever had that experience. And poor Daryl missed it by like 20 minutes.
I missed it.
And we were all like we were just clapping and like freaking out like little kids because it was just so cool. So I think about my experience looking at that, right? And then I think about like, well, I could put myself in somebody's shoes, like some test, aircraft or whatever. I have no idea what it is, and there it is. Up, must be an alien, And I would think maybe from your perspective, you would be like, as a pilot, as a kind of a guy that seeks new experiences, you'd be like, I want to fly it, or I want to see it. I want to find out how it works, like as if we have this kind of stuff that's doing that, I would love, like the same way you're talking about the international industry getting involved in the language of aliens and they'd be selling advertising to them in no time, and just doesn't that interest you that there's like, not necessarily that it's aliens, but like there's some massive leap forward in technology that we're just kind of on the cusp of getting to understand?
I guess where I come into play is there already are select individuals who have security clearances that know information that most of us will never know. And there are plenty of people in my industry who do have some of these clearances, top secret clearances. They have access to the black projects. These are planes and jets that you and I have never heard of, and they are properly briefed on not talking about them. And so it doesn't surprise me that there's evidence of technology out there that we're unaware of, or things that feel like they're decades ahead of us, because they are there. They exist. And no matter what position you are in, it doesn't matter if you're the president of the United States, there are going to be things out there that you are unaware of.
Right.
And I wouldn't be surprised if you have starry-eyed college students coming up with this new invention that some other top secret organization came up with 20 years ago.
There's something else we're unaware of.
And I'll tell you what.
And it's been on my mind this whole time.
What's that?
Dylan, you're a badass. What's the love like, man?
Love life?
Love life, man. Just throw it out there, man. We've been unaware of it for 2 episodes now. I want to know, man.
Yeah, because I'd imagine
you're wearing tank tops on boats. You're a part editor. You're going off, to the southernmost reaches of the world. Talk to us about the love life, man. They gotta be beating you down, man. They're hanging on your pants like, come on, please love me, Dylan. They have to. I need to know right now.
Yeah. And unfortunately, I'll give you this.
See, it's in there.
Listen, don't put the man on the spot like that. He's got to keep.
Dylan is a badass. He can talk about this.
What I will share, because I'm a gentleman,
man,
is I'm a romantic guy, and I treat women with respect.
Of course you do.
And COVID's a tough time for any relationship, but I'm not void of them.
My man.
A diplomatic answer. And,
love it.
Before
I knew it, man.
Before Daryl hit that there, I was going to say, I imagine if someone was briefed on how to, carefully answer those types of questions, similar to this one you just answered, that'd probably be the way to do it. Just saying that, if I were briefing someone, I'd brief them like that.
But I appreciate the positive thinking, and I'm glad you have a positive outlook on what my life may or may not be like.
My man, Dylan is smooth as shit, boy. He's smooth. I knew it.
Exactly. Well, NASA's going to be listening to this, Daryl. We got to be careful. So,
they're going to know he's smooth. That's
right.
what they're going to know.
Knew that. They already knew that. So, I think, and the cool thing they talk about Space Force, on at first glance, much like everything kind of today, it was a political thing at first, and we're not going to get into that because we don't really get into that here. But the longer it stayed in conversation, a lot of people were like, well, actually, not the worst idea. We were already operating in space in a bunch of different ways. It's kind of consolidating it all into one nice little structure. And, there's going to be a lot of, you talk about recruitment and getting people interested in either military service or science or just more in general. I mean, that's kind of a hot idea. Like if I was a healthy, high schooler, not really sure what I want to do, I might be like, maybe I'll go in the Air Force and then I can get into Space Force. Like, it's pretty sweet. Sounds cool. Is that something that interests you at all, Space Force, that whole idea, since you're kind of, or are you more interested in the science end of the operation?
From a government organizational standpoint,
Yeah,
I think the Space Force is great.
Mm-hmm.
I think this does send the right message to especially young people who are looking at maybe not sure what they want to do with their careers. And I think while the upfront cost is pretty high to take parts of existing branches and spin it off into a new branch, I think in the long run this is the right move. And what the Space Force is today is largely the portions of the Air Force Space Command that already were doing space-like activities, but of course there's much more to come. Personally, I have to choose how I spend my time, of course, and ultimately, if I, as a late undergrad college student years ago, when I was first thinking about would I make a good astronaut, is it worth my time to pursue? Do I think I have any chance? And then coming to the conclusion, yeah, I think I do. I think I would have a chance if I put the right effort into it. But in terms of the strategy of how to get there, there really are two different paths. Either you are in the armed forces or you're a civilian. And I believe that given my interests and my skills, I would have a better chance if I came at it from a civilian standpoint.
Makes sense. Because I imagine you're adding a whole, I mean, I was reading about it, specifically like the Blue Angels. Like I went on their website and I'm reading the bios of these pilots, and it's like the guy was a Golden Glover in first grade. And then, you know what I mean? And it just continues, like where he was a 3-sport varsity athlete. Like these guys that get to that level of military service, that are in those positions, like they've started a long time ago, and they've just been doing all that stuff. And I could see how there would be two ways to kind of go, and you got to pick which one is like for your strengths.
Yeah, and lately, in the last couple of rounds of the astronaut selection, you almost have 50-50 now. You have if you have 8 to 12 people being selected every 4 years for the program, you do see 4 to 6 being civilian, and so you do have quite a bit of representation from both sides. And there are plenty of people who would have a better chance of becoming an astronaut if they join the military and become a test pilot, versus other people who might have a better shot being a payload specialist and training, becoming the best PhD student they could be, and get the pilot license privately.
I guess things have come a long way, because there used to only be the one route, which was, test pilot, military service.
And we still have other astronaut corps that do require military service. Canada being one of them. They typically have 2, a male and a female astronaut selected every 4 years roughly, and they tend to all have a military background.
So as we wind down here, you just kind of brought it up a little bit, the NASA process. So where are you in that process, as much as you can talk about?
Sure. In March of this year, 12,000 people applied to the NASA astronaut selection. They changed the requirements a little bit this year. The numbers would have been higher for a number of applicants, but they required a master's this time. And so anyone who had a bachelor's but thought they could apply no longer have that opportunity. But still 12,000 people applied, and they've trimmed it down to an unknown number. I don't know myself, but somewhere probably around 400 to 500 people. And ultimately I have made it to that next round. So I am in the current group.
You're still in there.
Still in there. And
Boss.
yeah.
Straight boss.
Right. And so these 400 or 500 people are having all of their recommenders contacted. You have to have 5 recommenders, and then based upon what they think of you already, and then what your recommenders say, they'll choose roughly 120 people to invite to the next round, and these are the semifinalists who interview in person at NASA Johnson.
Wow. So all said and done, when do you think this process, how long does it take to get to that point?
It's long. It can take a year and a half potentially, and from the initial application point, especially with COVID making it tough for people to interview in person. So it's reasonable that the end of next year, like late 2021, is when we'll hear who those lucky 12 or so people are.
Wow. So like I said, man, we've come a long way since the last time we talked. And the last time we talked, we ended it with, like, what's next? What are you doing next? And you're like, I'm going to Antarctica. And then we got to hear all about it. So I posed to you, my brother, the same question as last time, with the expectation that you will come back on and tell us all about it. So what is next for the most qualified man, Dylan Dickstein?
Thank you. Yeah. And again, it's been an honor to be back with you guys. Thank you for inviting me back to talk about the 1-year update.
That's right.
I'm happy to be here. And I'm glad that we're all in video now. This is
Yes.
exciting. We get to see our beautiful faces.
That's right.
Yeah.
In that jacket. Anybody listening to the audio only version of this, you're missing out just, if anything, for the jacket. Check it out.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Sick. I'm going to order one immediately.
Ultimately, what I'm part of is it's a competition, right? You're vying against other qualified people for a job. And it's a very unique job application, right? Like, it requires very unique skills, and but you have to respect the organization who does that selecting. They do it better than anyone else, and ultimately, I am doing my best effort to be the best applicant I can be. I believe in myself that I would make a good astronaut. And I'm doing everything I can to prove that on paper and to show that in person. And if NASA ends up agreeing with me, then I'd be happy to be selected for this 2021 year. But if it doesn't happen, you have to appreciate the process and recognize that they know who the best astronauts are, and they know what qualities they need to have in their recruits. So ultimately, this next year for me is continuing to better myself, to get outside my comfort zone, to keep flying, to keep scuba diving. Should be scuba diving later this month. I'll be flying much more this fall, and to keep pushing that boundary and to take calculated risk and to keep learning. And if it ends up being me as one of the people that NASA feels would be a good astronaut, then I will accept that job. But I have to be okay with the fact that they know what qualities are best.
Dylan, you just when I think, man, I can't be any more like just in awe of you as a guy. Like you're humble, and to have that kind of gracious perspective on a decision-making process like that is like incredible. It's incredible. And as somebody who's grown up in a world of music where you're constantly being judged and competing for spots, and to have that kind of perspective on what you're going through and what your goals are, man, it inspires me, and I know it inspires our listeners. You know, I can speak for Daryl on this, man. You've got it. We know where you're headed, and you know, all the support and all the energy and all the love, you know, from the Everyman podcast here, man, to you. And this has been a fantastic conversation. Thank you so much. And you're the man, and just keep it going, brother.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.